spoilers ahead. Let's take a walk. In 2019, a game was released that told the story of a lone man delivering packages across an America devastated by a deadly and invisible threat. Afraid to go outside, people were confined to their homes, relying solely on the goods this man carried from places near and far. Sound familiar? Death Stranding is a fever dream of a game. Since its release, there has been much said about its complex narrative, its idiosyncratic dialogue, and the apparent genius of its creator, Hideo Kojima. Still, I haven't yet seen an analysis that has touched on the experience I had with the game, an experience that had me completely spellbound when I finally picked it up last year. One of the main talking points leading up to its release was that Death Stranding was going to be a completely new style of game. Dubbed the Strand genre, players would interact with each other in non-synchronous ways that would encourage cooperation and connection. Connection would in fact be the game's most singular theme. Whether we're talking about roads, bridges, ladders, climbing ropes, or human touch, Kojima's latest work asks us to consider how building connections between people might make humanity stronger. What is less talked about, however, is how the game's mechanics highlight the darker side of connection under capitalism. The game blatantly utilizes social media gamification techniques and corporate branding to engage the player in its systems, hacking into their body's reward center and weaving this very fact into its own meta-narrative. Yes, Death Stranding is literally manipulating you. But how do the game's mechanics accomplish this? And what, if anything, does this add to Death Stranding's commentary on social connection? History and real-world parallels. Kojima is notorious in the gaming world for upsetting industry norms, paving the way for new possibilities while at the same time predicting unseen futures. 2001's Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, in particular, has been cited by many as a prophetic work that foresaw the internet's penchant for creating false narratives and amplifying the worst aspects of humanity. 15 years later, Donald Trump was elected president on a parade of lies and false information, fueled largely by social media. Entire social movements would erupt out of the vitriol amplified by algorithms built only to increase engagement. The post-truth era had officially begun. Death Stranding, on the other hand, was released in November of 2019, just months before the COVID-19 pandemic hit the United States. The game tells the story of a man delivering packages to the citizens of a fractured America, all forced to stay inside due to an unseen threat spreading across the country. When the pandemic eventually hit, many were quick to pick up on these uncanny parallels. And while these connections are fascinating, I found the game's mechanics to be telling a much more nuanced story that I haven't really seen discussed yet. While the game does encourage players to connect, how that connection is made is just as important. The game's narrative takes players on a journey which echoes many aspects of American history, from the Industrial Revolution to the inception of the Internet. Through these experiences, the player is forced to grapple with the realities of a completely connected world in a much more direct way than a film or written work could. The Strand genre. So what is a Strand game? At its most basic, the Strand is a means of connecting two disparate elements. In this case, two players. When one player drops a ladder to go up a steep incline, another player may also find that ladder in their world to help them along that same path. In this way, players are able to rely on each other to make their job of delivering packages easier. The Strand genre therefore encourages cooperation. The strands that connect players can appear as ropes, zip lines, shelters, and vehicles. You also might come across the lost cargo of another player, which you can return to them if you're willing to go through the trouble. Good deeds are rewarded by exchanging likes. Yes, the same kind of likes that social media utilizes to encourage user engagement. The more likes you dole out, the more likes you receive in return. The more you are able to see and use the things other players leave behind. It is through this algorithmic interaction that players are able to change the world of Death Stranding together, creating paths by wearing down the landscape where many have traveled, and leaving directions and clues to different items and resources. In a 2019 article posted to Medium titled Death Stranding is Social Media, gamer Evan Blevins describes how rewarding multiplayer interactions with likes functions much like a social platform, creating norms of where to best place signs and objects in order to go viral. As many studies have shown, these small incentives implemented by corporations like Meta and Google manipulate our behavior online, and may alter it in the real world as well. In Death Stranding, these incentives work much the same way, mechanically and narratively. For protagonist Sam Porter Bridges, his fear of human touch makes him a perfect, albeit ironic, candidate for the lonely life of a porter. Traveling alone through the wilderness, Sam is on a mission to reconnect the disparate stragglers who still make their home in the land once known as the United States. Sam vocally questions the corporation Bridges and their goal to reestablish America as the United Cities of America. With no close family or real friends to speak of, Sam enjoys his small life of self-determinism, humbly delivering supplies to those who need them. However, upon learning his adopted sister, Amelie, is being held captive on the Pacific coast, Bridges sees the opportunity to wield Sam's last human connection for their own benefit. Ultimately, Sam is convinced to travel out west to save Amelie, bringing settlements into the UCA along the way, carrying out Bridges' plan after all. Today, social media companies use the pretense of connecting us with friends and family to farm our personal information, selling it to a largely obfuscated data market. Making connections, it seems, comes at a cost. As I embarked upon my own journey as Sam, traveling west across the barren landscape of post-apocalyptic America, I couldn't help but think of the original mission of Manifest Destiny, how it propelled a nation forward on the philosophy of godliness and prosperity, enabling countless atrocities along the way, and how history tends to repeat itself when we refuse to deal with the past, and instead attempt to lock it away until it comes bubbling back up like a black tar threatening to swallow us from within. Making connections, the landscape. The first connection a player makes in Death Stranding is to the landscape. While many have criticized the game for its slow pace, it is precisely the deliberate choice to slow the player down that enables the game to do its best work. In an email from the Collector, one of many characters Sam will deliver to, he expounds on the lost art of letter writing. There was a time when you couldn't just compose and send a message and have it delivered to the recipient almost instantaneously. I can't help but thinking that might have been a good thing. Imagine spending your days waiting with bated breath, wondering what the postman might bring. What a beautiful exercise for the imagination. The empty space between each of Sam's destinations provides time for us, the player, to reflect, to daydream. And it is this relatively slow pace of gameplay that interacts directly with the game's second biggest theme, time. On one hand, the passage of time in Death Stranding manifests in a slow, methodical nature. The player is encouraged to take each step with care, lest they trip over a rock or cascade off a ledge. So many design choices back up this suggestion, from the slow, brooding music to the cool, colored vistas that stretch out before the player. The game is beautiful, and it wants you to take the time to notice. All this, however, is balanced by another core mechanic, timefall, the rain which rapidly ages anything it touches. As the player navigates the terrain, they must constantly negotiate the risks of getting caught in a timefall shower, which will quickly degrade the quality of their cargo until it is rendered useless. The concept of sped-up time pervades many aspects of the game. While Bridges rushes to find a way to stop the dead from crossing into the world of the living, i.e., to shut out death, Sam works to resurrect a dying nation. As YouTube writer Noah Gervais pointed out in his own video, the player's act of rebuilding a network of roads spanning the nation mirrors the construction of the Lincoln Highway, America's first transcontinental highway. I'll put a link to that video in the description. You should check it out. It's really good. As the roads are completed, the player is able to deliver faster. Large swaths of land that took time and resources to traverse now take mere seconds. This increased pace of gameplay mirrors the increased speed of life brought on by the automobile and industrial revolution. Likewise, our own modern times have seen the internet revolutionize the speed at which information travels, a theme Kojima intimately explored in the Metal Gear Solid series. In Death Stranding, this concept takes the form of the chiral network. The chiral network and Bridges. Sam's core goal in the game is to reconnect America by bringing as many people as possible into the chiral network, a new form of internet powered by a newly discovered matter called chiralium. The catch is that chiralium comes from the beach, a sort of purgatory where dead spirits known as beached things or BTs dwell. As Sam expands the network, so too does he strengthen the connection to the beach, causing potential chiral spikes, storms which result in bringing more timefall and therefore more BTs into the world of the living. The parallels to climate change are strengthened as the player is forced to experience the harsh effects of their appointed mission in real time. Not only does one have to deal with the damaging effects of timefall, now they must worry about losing their life and cargo to an army of unseen ghosts ready to pull them into a black abyss. Balancing these factors becomes the core challenge of gameplay, and an overarching dilemma the player must grapple with. What are the costs of the society we have built, and how could we do it differently a second time? In the late game, I found my experience as a player had changed drastically. With the roads all built and zipline routes plotted, each expedition became a practice of optimization. Sure, the experience was easier, but that sense of imagination that once filled each discovery was harder to come by. After all this time, I realized that while I had been working to reconnect America, I found myself now disconnected from the artful vistas that initially drew me in. With my focus now mainly on optimizing my playstyle, receiving the most likes for each order, and unlocking the best equipment, it became the difference between quality of playtime and quantity. I found myself chasing that feeling I had early on in the game, when there were still new areas to discover and story to reveal. I kept playing because I wanted more content from Death Stranding, even if all it had to offer was a large quantity of fetch quests to tick off a checklist. Looking back, this outcome was foreshadowed from the very beginning. The first time I completed a long order, hiking through the misty mountains and over foamy river rapids to finally arrive at a delivery screen, I was taken aback by the amount of statistics spit out at me. In fact, the UI of these delivery assessments seemed specifically designed to overwhelm me with numbers and different level grades that ultimately changed nothing about my playstyle. The game even includes a skip button to speed up the flow of numbers, as if acknowledging the absurdity of it all. Even the veteran Porter, an optional character Sam can meet along the way, sympathizes with the player. Bridges has its own evaluation system, doesn't it? Must get pretty stressful having to think about all those different factors. Cargo condition, delivery speed, all that jazz. I mean, sure, all that stuff's important, but it's got nothing to do with what portering's really all about. You can tell the guys who set the system up aren't like you and me. After a few instances of clicking through these screens, I got used to the routine and mostly ignored it altogether. To be forced to go through this for every delivery in the game seems excessive and possibly on purpose. Bridges is a corporation whose goal, after all, is to optimize Sam to deliver. As a player, Is it our goal to equally optimize our gameplay? Oxytocin and touch. In one revealing piece of in-game content titled "Like Secrete Oxytocin," we see reference to a familiar scenario. Before the Stranding, the world was connected. There were networks, social networks we called them, that people used to communicate all the time. They shared all sorts of stuff through them: a random thought, a pretty picture, a home movie, you name it. And if you liked something that someone else had uploaded, you let them know by giving them, well, a like. Eventually, someone ran tests on the users of these networks and discovered that receiving a like triggered a rush of oxytocin. The fact that oxytocin is also the hormone released when humans touch is referenced at various points throughout the game. This lack of human connection is seen everywhere, from Sam's fear of touch to the many characters who won't leave their homes, and even in the BTs who reach out from the beach with their shadowy hands. Numerous times throughout the game, the player will be asked to deliver a shipment of oxytocin. In fact, much of the population in the game world suffers from a lack of the hormone, and it is referenced in several in-game documents that span subjects such as birth, mother-child connection, asexuality, and addiction. It's in this key theme of touch where Death Stranding makes its most illuminating connection to that of the player themselves. Online interactions, rewarded with likes and heart emojis, trigger the same chemical receptors in our brains that respond to human touch. After a time, these virtual interactions begin to stand in for their real-world counterparts. Rather than connecting us, these corporations become a social interface that separates people from each other. While Death Stranding is no doubt commenting on this phenomenon, as a video game, it uses these same tactics to draw us into its own systems of play. As we control Sam to deliver oxytocin shipments in the game, our own oxytocin receptors are rewarded for completing said deliveries. The resulting meta-narrative is one that grapples with the very nature of gaming itself. Homo Ludens. In an interview at the 2019 Tribeca Film Festival, Kojima fluidly moves between referring to the game's protagonist as Sam, character's name, and Norman Reedus, the actor's name, as he addresses the topic of point of view in Death Stranding. You'll see Norman as Sam in the game, and you'll see his cutscenes, and you'll see his acting. And you're also moving him because it's a game. But you have to be close to become Norman in the game when you play. And Norman actually says a lot of things you will probably feel playing as Norman. This is why the player is put in charge of even Sam's bowel movements. It's funny, of course, but there are a few aspects of Sam's well-being the player isn't privy to. It's the same reason Sam, while trekking up a hillside, will occasionally blurt out, "Everyone is going to be real grateful for your sacrifice." He is speaking directly to us, because he is us. These moments emphasize how Sam's identity has been totally absorbed by his role as a porter. He is the man who delivers, a character, an avatar. He not only takes on the name of his profession, but also the name of the corporation he serves. And as he reconnects the world, he loses himself in the process. Sam Strand becomes Sam Porter Bridges, picking up the cargo for one more delivery. At the same time, the player becomes Sam, picking up the controller for one more hit of oxytocin. Both are addicted to delivering. This is not a literal suggestion that the players of Death Stranding are gaming addicts, but only that Kojima is nodding toward a much more malicious form of this relationship, which manifests not only in social media, but in predatory economic systems like pay-to-win online service games, the gig economy, and China's social credit system. In fact, Kojima explicitly references his reverence for the player in many nods to the concept of the Homo Ludens, or one who plays. In another in-game email that cites Johan Huizinga's book Homo Ludens, it is explained, "He had this theory that play was older than even culture itself, and was at the heart of what made us who we are. I believe that if we can rediscover the kind of play he was talking about, we can undo the damage caused by chiral contamination. to think that games could be the key to saving humanity. It is this innocent and primal sense of play in which we, the player, find freedom, the freedom to discover a new America. While Death Stranding may nudge us to consider the dark side of connection, it is also apparent that it attempts to present us with a new middle path. What makes the Strand system compelling is how it asks us to envision what a new form of game might look like. One that encourages us to engage with one another in positive ways and explore new ways of relating to the world. Not just the same old run-and-gun, dopamine-dispensing military simulators, but forms of play that bring us together. Games are especially good at creating frameworks for which to explore new possibilities. And Death Stranding asks us to consider how humanity will march into the uncertain future, scattered and divided, or banded together by our shared experiences. New Game Plus. After completing the game's story, the whole country connected, likes flowing in from other players, I retraced my old steps to clean up any side content I may have missed. But returning to the original place the game started, I found the terrain to be strange and alien. Upon reaching a large distribution center, one I had visited many times before, I found the grassy field that once surrounded it was gone. Instead, a muddy swath of interlacing paths now took its place, having been trodden down by so many other Sams on their missions to reconnect America. What was once an idyllic plain stretching out to a distant mountain was now littered with player signs, deteriorated ladders, and bridges. Their remains pocked the landscape, small reminders of the cost a project like that of rebuilding America incurs. The calm and quiet beauty of the early game was now replaced by a categorized and quantified map of territory. My Sam called out, "Hello," and when another identical voice answered back, I couldn't help but wonder if there was a different route I could have taken to get to this point. A quieter, less disruptive one. Maybe it was time, I thought, to wipe the slate clean and start over from the beginning. Thanks so much for watching. This is my first video essay, and there's a lot of stuff I had to cut out of this video that I'd like to elaborate on in the future. For instance, I didn't even talk about Higgs once. So if you liked the video, I'd really appreciate your support in the form of a thumbs up or a subscribe. I work and go to school full-time. However, if there's any measurable interest in anything I said here, that would be a great motivator to keep working on this stuff. Anyways, I'm off to go play Death Stranding 2 now. I made a rule I had to wait until this video was published before I could do that, so here it is. In the meantime, you know how to get in touch.